Welcome to DPC Pediatrician. We're Dr. Phil Boucher
and Dr. Marina Capella, two DPC pediatricians who are on a mission to share our love of direct primary care with you.
Okay, welcome to another episode of DPC Pediatricians. Today, we have a topic that Marina and I have not discussed our views on. I don't know what she thinks about it, and I do know what I think about it. But today, we're going to be talking about naming your practice. And so since I don't know what you think about it, I want to let you go first, Marina, and talk about naming your practice. Because this is a big thing. Like most pediatricians have never gotten to name their practice or pick out their colors or the logos or things. They join a practice. They're employed by a big hospital system. They just accept the branding and color schemes. Like this is something where it's really like your baby, and it's going to be something that sticks with you for a long time and has quite an impact. Like when you answer the phone, you're going to say this. You're going to refer people to your website. How did you pick your name? And then what are your thoughts around picking names?
Yeah, I definitely thought a lot about it. I think it's something that maybe we overthink in the beginning, but there are a few basic principles that I think can guide you as you try to choose your practice name. What I did for mine is I really wanted a name that easily identified me as a pediatrician, obviously. And then also that embodied my brand. So that said something about not just me being a pediatrician, because there are, thousands of pediatricians in Utah, but something about how I was unique as a pediatrician. And so I ended up going with the name Healing Arts Pediatrics because I knew I wanted to dive into integrative pediatrics and get more training and expand my skills there and market myself as that. So that really influenced my choice of my name. But also one other thing I'll mention is that I've seen a lot of practices use their surname as part of their business name. And there are pros and cons to doing that. I think it can be lovely, but also for me, I wasn't sure what the future was going to look like. I didn't know if eventually I would have other people on board. I would hire other pediatricians. And so I didn't want it to just be associated with my name because I wanted to leave the future open to different possibilities, including expansion.
Right. I think that you really hit the nail on the head there with it feels like a really big thing too. And I kind of set it up to be a really big thing the way that I was talking about it at the beginning of the episode. And it is a big thing, but you can certainly overthink it. Did you have any other contenders when you were deciding that like you eventually led to Healing Arts?
I did. I don't remember what they were at this point, but I know I had a couple, and there was a little bit of going back and forth. I did search. I did a Google search. I recommend doing a Google search for whatever name you're thinking of having, because you want to make sure it's not a name that's really close to what someone else has or exactly what someone else has. And I did find that there was a massage place near me called Healing Arts Massage. And so I kind of vacillated a little bit on should I choose this name. But ultimately, I felt like adding pediatrics to it, I was doing something completely different, that it would be okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I think when I was thinking about names, I thought too, like you, well, one, my name is kind of hard to say. And so I didn't want to have to be like correcting people, Boucher Pediatrics, Boucher Pediatrics, all of those sorts of things. Like it just is a little bit more challenging for people in this part of the country to say that name. And so that led me away from my own name. And also, just like you, I didn't know what the future would hold, and I still don't know what the future will hold, but I didn't want it to be all me or all about me necessarily. And so that led me away from naming it with my own name in there. Like, I don't know about expansion clinics or other doctors or other things in the future. And I also wanted to have a team and have it be that these patients receive care from our whole team. And so it's not just me and I started the practice and believe in the model, but I didn't want it to all be about me, so that as we grow, people aren't like saying, oh, I want to see Dr. Boucher, I don't want to see anyone else. If there's other team members as we grow and expand our clinic and presence. The names, so I had a couple on the short list because I live in the Midwest, I live in Nebraska. And so there were some like hearkening back to the days of old and the idea of kind of like the Little House on the Prairie, the doctor that comes to you, because we do newborn house calls and those sorts of things. And so I had Pioneer,
Uh-huh.
And one of the streets that's really near us is Pioneers too, which I didn't want to necessarily associate it with the street name. And I've seen practices do that. And actually, our vet practice is named Rockbrook Animal Clinic, which isn't even in Rockbrook anymore. Like they've moved twice since then, but they hold on to like the little neighborhood that they were in, despite not being anywhere near Rockbrook anymore. So I didn't want to have a location thing in case we ever move or things like that. But Pioneer, because of just like the old Pioneer days and those sorts of things. And then what was the other one? Prairie Pediatrics, which I liked too. Just kind of same sort of vibe of, you know, country living, Midwest living, that sort of thing. And then I was actually just driving down the street, and actually by my old practice, I saw the name Frontier Road, and it just was like, oh, Frontier. That embodies the frontier life, like doing something new, and also being in the plains and like a frontierish area of the country, at least back in the day. And it also is something that's new in terms of the model. So being a frontier, being somebody on the forefront of a new way of practice and a new model of practice. So those all led me to Frontier. And then I did, of course, like you said, the Google search, the Instagram search to see like what is taken. And actually Frontier Pediatrics is taken, like both the Google name or the domain name and the Instagram handle and all those sorts of things. And so that led me to just kind of like riff on that a little bit with Frontier Pediatric Care, which for me allows me to do a little bit more than just pediatrician. So we have therapists and everything in our practice too, and mental health and all of those sorts of things integrated in. And so Frontier Pediatric Care, at least in my mind, allowed for a little bit more latitude in all that we do, rather than being strictly a pediatrician office, that we have some other angles to the care that we provide to. And that domain was available. Frontierpediatric.care was available. And so those things all led me down that rabbit hole.
I'm curious, when you searched for Frontier Pediatrics, was that existing in your state or somewhere else?
No, it was in another state. It was in, I think, South Dakota or Idaho or something like that, not nearby or anything. So there wasn't like really an issue with the naming. It was more just wanting to have a different domain name, I guess. I'm not sure what really led me to say, like, because of course there's plenty of like repeat names. Like there's only so many words that you can associate with a pediatric practice. So I don't think you have to have something that's completely novel and doesn't exist anywhere in the country. That certainly isn't the case, but I just wanted something that was unique enough and could be, you know, an easy domain name and those sorts of things.
Yeah. I just asked because I know sometimes, you know, when I was registering my name with the state checks their directories to make sure that it's not a name that's already used by someone else in the state, but they don't necessarily check, you know, outside of your state. But it can get a little sticky if there's a trademark name or, you know, something like that. So just be careful and look outside of your immediate area.
I think that's really important too, is like checking the trademark before you get way deep down the path. Like if you buy a domain name, I mean, most domain names that aren't like really fancy, like anything that has pediatric in it is going to be like a few bucks to buy the GoDaddy domain. So even if you buy a domain name and don't end up using it, but you definitely don't want to get so far into the weeds that you have a trademark violation, or you get a cease and desist 6 months in that somebody discovered that you are, you know, infringing upon their trademark or something like that. I also wanted to say I really like some of the unique ones where you're kind of like, wait, why did they pick that name? And then there's some story behind it, like your Healing Arts. Who is it? Is it Paul Thomas has Plum Health? And there's just some that kind of stand out as a really unique name that makes you wonder, like, why Plum? Why did they pick that? And I can't remember from reading his website in the distant past why he picked that. But some of those just like pique your curiosity as like, why is it Starfish Pediatrics or whatever it might be? Like what about that really stood out to the person, which is just kind of another story that you can tell as you market and grow your practice.
Yeah, definitely. That reminds me, I think there's a family medicine DPC doc who is stand-up DPC, direct primary care, and it's because he likes doing stand-up comedy, and so that's something really unique to his personality, his brand. So yeah, you can have fun with this. You can be creative. Choose something that really makes you unique, because that's going to be part of your marketing strategy too down the line, is highlighting the things about your practice that make you and your approach to care unique. So have fun with it. It can be something pretty basic, but it can also be something fun if you want it to be.
For sure. It should be fun. Like, you should look forward to answering the phone and saying those words, like that you stand behind that. So I think that is something to really keep in mind as you're figuring out a name. It's like something that excites you and gives you energy to go to work every day.
I would add also one thing, like, you don't have to be married to this name for the rest of your life. It is possible to change it. It just becomes a little complicated and a little bit of a headache in terms of all of the paperwork, all the bank accounts, all of the other accounts that are associated with it will also have to be changed. But it is possible. So if you end up changing your plans for the future or changing your mind about your branding, you can change it in the future.
That made me think of one other thing to say too, is another reason. I mean, both of us kind of came down, it sounds like, on the side of not necessarily naming it based on your name, is at some point you're going to retire, or sometime you're going to move on. And if you're going to close the practice, that's one thing. But if you want it to live on after you, then you have to decide, okay, is it going to remain my last name, Pediatrics, or is it going to change hands? And then they're going to have to rename it on all those other things. So if you're kind of looking to the distant future of what's the exit strategy going to be, that may play a role in the way that you decide on the name. Is it something that eventually you can sell? Because unlike a traditional practice where really like the value is in those insurance contracts and those ongoing patients, you have a lot more ability in a direct primary care practice to sell it for a lot more money at the end of the day, because you have that membership model. Like, people don't have to keep coming in to keep having recurrent revenue, which is much more attractive to somebody that is both buying a practice and somebody that's selling a practice, that there's a recurrent revenue. And it's not just, okay, we have to get up to speed and they're going to be slower and all those sorts of things. It's very much more turnkey for a new owner to come in, and that there's much more advantage to you as the founder and creator when you do decide it's time for me to retire and I want to sell this. And so that is something that may play a role in that too, is eventually I'm going to retire, not going to do this until the day that I die, hopefully. I want that to live on after me, or I'm just going to do it and then I'm going to close and be done when I decide that I want to retire. So just another angle to consider.
Yeah. And we should probably have an episode at some point in the future about exit strategies, because that's something really important to think about even in the beginning. Is at some point, none of us are going to practice forever. What do I do? What do I want to do in the future? Or what do I think I want to do, at least? But it is important to think about. So an episode for the future.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll have another episode next week, and we'll keep carrying on the discussion. Please keep in touch if you would like to reach out, get help, get support, get advice. We're both eager to help those that are embarking on the DPC journey or thinking about it.